Let me take you back to the last day of my sophomore year in high school. It was supposed to be just another day, until everything changed in a single, unexpected moment. A classmate took a swing with a baseball bat. As he wound up for a full hit, the bat slipped out of his hands. It came hurtling toward me, striking me directly between the eyes. I don't remember the moment of impact, but the damage? That was unforgettable. The bat hit me with such force that it crushed my nose into a distorted U-shape, and the collision drove the soft tissue of my brain against the inside of my skull. A wave of swelling surged throughout my head, and in that split second, my face was shattered. I had a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and 2 shattered eye sockets. When I opened my eyes, I was met with faces frozen in shock, people running over to help. I looked down and saw spots of red on my clothes. Blood was pouring from my nose, but I hadn't yet grasped the seriousness of my injuries. One of my classmates pulled off his shirt and handed it to me, and I used it to try and stop the flow. A teacher wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and we started the long walk to the nurse's office, across the field, down the hill, and back into the school. I felt random hands supporting me as we walked, steadying me, holding me upright. We moved slowly, unaware of just how much every minute mattered. When we finally reached the nurse's office, she began asking me simple questions to assess my condition. "What year is it?" she asked. 1998, I replied. It was actually 2002. Who was the president of the United States? Bill Clinton, I answered. The correct answer was George W. Bush. In that moment, I was lost, confused, and broken in ways I couldn't yet understand. But this incident marked the beginning of a journey that would teach me the power of small habits, resilience, and rebuilding step by step. The nurse looked me in the eyes, pausing for a moment before asking, "What is your mom's name?" I hesitated, feeling a strange emptiness in my mind. 10 long seconds passed. "Patty," I finally replied, trying to sound casual, ignoring the fact that it had taken me so long to remember my own mother's name. That was the last question I remember. As the swelling in my brain accelerated, my body couldn't keep up. I lost consciousness before the ambulance even arrived. Minutes later, I was carried out of school and rushed to the local hospital. Shortly after we arrived, my body started shutting down. I struggled to do the most basic things, swallowing, breathing. I had my first seizure of the day, and then I stopped breathing entirely. Doctors scrambled to supply me with oxygen and quickly realized the local hospital didn't have the resources to handle my condition. They called in a helicopter to take me to a larger hospital in Cincinnati. They wheeled me out through the emergency room doors toward the helipad across the street. My stretcher rattled on the uneven sidewalk as one nurse pushed me along while another pumped each breath into me by hand. My mother, who had just arrived at the hospital, climbed into the helicopter with me. I remained unconscious and unable to breathe on my own as she held my hand during the flight. While my mom rode with me in the helicopter, my dad had to go home to check on my brother and sister to explain what had happened. As he broke the news, tears welled up in his eyes. He told my sister that he wouldn't be able to attend her 8th grade graduation that night. Then, after arranging for family and friends to look after them, he drove to Cincinnati to meet us. When my mom and I landed on the hospital rooftop, nearly 20 doctors and nurses were waiting at the helipad. They rushed me to the trauma unit, where the swelling in my brain had already caused repeated post-traumatic seizures. My broken bones needed to be set, but I was far too unstable for surgery. After my 3rd seizure of the day, the doctors made a difficult decision. They placed me in a medically induced coma and connected me to a ventilator. It was now up to fate and the doctor's skill to bring me back. My parents were no strangers to this hospital. 10 years earlier, they had walked through the same doors on the ground floor when my sister was diagnosed with leukemia at age 3. I was 5 at the time, and my brother was just 6 months old. After 2.5 years of chemotherapy treatments, spinal taps, and bone marrow biopsies, my little sister finally walked out of the hospital happy, healthy, and cancer-free. And now, after 10 years of normal life, my parents found themselves back in the same place with a different child. While I slipped into a coma, the hospital sent a priest and a social worker to comfort my parents. It was the same priest who had met with them a decade earlier on the night they found out my sister had cancer.